The punishment decree. The royal court of Zilari Prime was filled with silence. Every noble, warrior, and council member sat frozen as Queen Draylana stood tall on her silver throne. Her face was cold, unreadable. Her voice, when it came, echoed through the crystal hall like a blade striking stone. "Princess Calith of House Varn," she said, "for your dishonor you are hereby punished." Calith stood in the center of the circle. Her long black cloak touched the shining floor. Her red eyes, full of fire, stared at the queen without fear. "I saved innocent lives," she said firmly. "I refused to burn a village of children just to scare rebels." "That village gave shelter to enemies," the queen replied. "Your disobedience has cost us control in the southern sectors." Calith didn't reply. She already knew the court didn't care about right or wrong, only about power. The queen raised one hand and a scroll was brought forward. "Your punishment," she said, "is to marry the human." A wave of gasps filled the room. Calith's heart froze. "No," she whispered. "Yes," the queen said, with a smirk. "You will marry the Terran ambassador's soldier, the one they call Jack Wren. It will be announced as an alliance, but we know the truth." "You mean to shame me," Calith growled. "You chose mercy," the queen said. "Now mercy has chosen you." Calith had heard of humans, strange, soft creatures from a blue planet. Their weapons were outdated. Their ships were slow. They believed in strange things. Love, freedom, forgiveness. To be married to one? It would be the same as exile. No Zilari warrior had ever taken a human partner. It was unthinkable, and that's why the queen had chosen it. A few hours later, in the lower deck of the palace, a human soldier was summoned. Jack Wren arrived wearing simple black armor. He was tall for a human with calm eyes and a quiet presence. He bowed politely when the message was given. "You're to marry Princess Calith, as a gesture of peace." Jack blinked once. "I thought this was a war council." "It was." Jack didn't ask more, he just nodded slowly. "I see." No one told him the truth, that this was not a peace treaty. It was a trap. The next day, in a cold hall with no music, no guests, and no joy, the ceremony began. Calith stood in armor, not a dress. Jack wore his cleanest uniform, his medals polished, but he looked uncomfortable. She didn't look at him. Not once. She kept her eyes on the ground, her jaw tight, her pride locked behind silence. When the royal seal was stamped on the bond file, the elder spoke in a flat voice. "You are now bound under Zilari law." That was it. No celebration, no kiss, no smile, just silence. They were sent to a small outpost far from the capital, a quiet desert colony meant for outcasts, miners, and broken machines. Calith didn't speak to him the entire journey. Jack didn't try. He simply carried her gear, helped her down the landing ramp, and walked behind her. At the entrance of their new home, a metal dome buried half in sand, he finally spoke. "I know you didn't choose this," he said. She paused but didn't turn. "Then do not speak to me," she said coldly. "As you wish," he replied. That night, Calith sat alone on the roof of the dome. She stared at the stars. Her father had once told her she would command a fleet one day. She had trained for battle, for leadership. But now she was here, married to a human, a punishment wearing a kind face. Inside the dome, Jack cooked something over a heat plate. The smell of simple earth food filled the air, something called vegetable stew. He poured a bowl and walked outside. He didn't say anything, just placed the bowl near her and walked back. And she looked at it, then looked at the stars, then picked it up, just one spoon. She didn't say thank you, but for the first time that day, her hands stopped shaking. The wedding without joy. Rain fell, thin, dusty drops that smelled like rust and sand. Calith stood under a steel awning at the edge of the outpost, her cloak damp, her face like stone. Today was the wedding, but there were no flowers, no music, no family, just two signatures, one vow, and the sound of wind scraping over cracked metal roofs. a punishment dressed in tradition. Jack Wren stood across from her in the open hall, if it could even be called that. It was just a metal floor with rusted beams and two witnesses, an alien clerk and a malfunctioning recording drone. He had shaved, polished his boots, brushed his short brown hair with his fingers, and stood like a soldier, quiet, respectful, but clearly uncomfortable. He had not expected this life. And she had not expected to feel anything at all. But there was something, buried deep and irritating. Guilt? No, shame? Not quite. Confusion. Why was this human not angry, not mocking her, not arrogant like the others she had fought in the war? He looked at her with soft, unreadable eyes, like she was a puzzle, not a punishment. "State your bond," the clerk said in a mechanical voice. Jack cleared his throat. "My name is Jack Wren, citizen of Earth and peace representative under the human Terran." "Accord," he paused, then added almost awkwardly, "I vow to respect, protect, and walk beside my bondmate if she allows it." Calith's eyes narrowed. If she allows it? That wasn't part of the traditional vow. It wasn't weakness. It was something worse. Kindness. "Now," the clerk turned to her. "State your bond." She looked away. "I am Calith of House Varn. I do this by royal order. I make no vow." Jack didn't flinch. The clerk hesitated, then pressed a button. Bond complete. That was it. No fire, no ceremony, no celebration. They walked back to their quarters in silence. The dome was simple. 2 rooms, 1 small shared kitchen, and a mom storage cell full of tools and survival gear. Jack placed his bag in the right room. She took the left. He didn't speak. He didn't ask questions. He just started unpacking calmly, like a man settling into a mission post. Calith watched from the corner of her eye. He cleaned the stove, repaired a broken vent, even adjusted the door lock, which jammed too easily in the heat. All without complaint. All with quiet hands. That night, she sat in her room, eyes on the door. He hadn't knocked. He hadn't entered. Not even a word. She waited. Nothing. The next morning, she woke to the smell of warm food. On the table in the kitchen sat a plate. Eggs, fruit slices, a hot drink. She stared at it, then at the human. He sat near the window, reading something on a digital pad. Calm, focused. She walked slowly to the table. "You made this?" He looked up. "Yes." She lifted the plate slightly. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity," he said. "It's breakfast." She froze, then sat. She didn't thank him, but she ate. For the next 3 days, they barely spoke. Jack spent his time fixing broken panels in the outpost, helping locals carry cargo, repairing a generator at the comms tower without being asked. Calith watched. He was different from the other humans she had fought in the war. They had been loud, greedy, crude. This one didn't even raise his voice. And every night, a meal appeared on the table. Sometimes it was hot stew, sometimes flatbread and broth. Always with no words, just quiet respect. On the 5th night, something changed. She returned late from a walk in the outer hills. The stars were strange here, fewer, moons, quieter winds. Her mind was full of angry thoughts. When she opened the door, Jack stood up quickly. "You're bleeding," he said. She looked down. A scratch ran along her leg. "Thorn vine." "It's nothing." He walked over with a med kit. She backed up. "I said it's nothing." He didn't argue. He just placed the kit on the table and walked away. She sat, cleaned the cut, stared at the closed door of his room, then spoke, loud enough to carry. "Why are you like this?" No answer. She stood, walked to the door. "I was told humans are selfish, weak. You don't even raise your voice. You should hate me. I humiliated you." From behind the door, his calm voice came. "I wasn't sent to hate. I was sent to heal." She blinked, That was not what she expected. Not at all. That night she didn't sleep. The words repeated in her head again and again. I was sent to heal. She didn't understand, but for the first time since the punishment began, she wanted to. Cold walls, warm gestures. Kalith sat on the edge of her bed. Outside, the sand wind blew against the dome like 1,000 whispers. The metal walls creaked under pressure. Her planet was far away. Her court, her army, her pride, gone. Now she was married to a human, her punishment. Yet, he hadn't punished her, not even once. That was the strange part. Each morning she expected the mask to drop, that he'd finally show his real self. Anger, insult, desire, something. Instead, she found her boots repaired, her broken armor patch stitched. A hot drink waiting in the kitchen. He even adjusted the shower temperature to suit her cold-blooded skin without her asking. Every day he left quietly to help the nearby settlement. He taught local children how to set up field shields. He carried old machines on his back like it was nothing. He didn't ask her to come, he didn't ask her to speak. But every day when he returned, he placed something small on her side of the table. A flower, a new data crystal, a simple poem, printed from his earth tablet. He never said a word about it, he just left it there. On the 6th day, she finally spoke at dinner. "You do not have to keep doing this," she said. Jack looked up from his meal. "Doing what?" "These things, the food, the gifts. I'm not going to melt like some soft human girl." Jack gave a soft smile. "I didn't ask you to melt." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why?" He took a slow breath. "You're not a punishment to me, her." Breath caught in her throat, she placed her spoon down slowly. "You're lying." He shook his head. "I don't lie." She stared at him across the table. "Then you're foolish." Jack shrugged. "Maybe. But even fools can see pain when it's right in front of them." Her hands tensed. "You think I'm weak?" "No," he said firmly. "I think you're exhausted from pretending you're not." She stood and left the table without another word. But she didn't throw the flower away that night. She kept it beside her bed. The next morning, Jack was gone before sunrise. The settlement had reported broken solar towers in the North Ridge. It was dangerous, close to wild beasts that roamed at night. Kalith stood at the dome entrance watching the sun rise. Then, without thinking, she grabbed her blaster and headed out. She found him hours later, on top of a broken tower, sweat dripping down his forehead, fixing loose wires under the harsh desert sun. He looked down and blinked in surprise. "You followed me?" "I was bored," she said quickly. "Ah." He smiled. Dangerous kind of boredom. They worked in silence for an hour. She handed him tools. He explained what each wire did, not because she asked, but because he liked sharing. When they returned to the dome, he looked tired. She opened the door before he could, for the first time. He noticed, but didn't say a word. That night, the power went out. A sandstorm hit hard. The wind screamed. The dome rattled like a ship under attack. Kalith lit emergency lamps while Jack worked fast to lock the seals. Then she found him in the hallway, trying to restart the generator manually. "Why? Don't you rest?" she asked. "I don't rest well in storms," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. She hesitated, then handed him a thermal pack. He blinked. "You made this?" She looked away. "Just heated it." "Still," he said, accepting it with a tired smile. "Thanks." Later that night, she sat by his door, not inside, not talking, just sitting. He knew she was there. He didn't speak. He just smiled behind the door. And for once, the storm outside sounded softer. The next morning, she left something on the table. A small stone from her home planet. Polished, blue, beautiful. He picked it up and held it gently. "You don't have to give me anything," he said. "I know," she replied. He looked at her. She didn't look away. The day she fell, ill, Kalith didn't wake up. Jack noticed it when he returned from the ridge. The sun was high, the air dry. Dust clung to his boots as he stepped into the dome. Usually, she would be sitting near the window watching the hills, but her chair was empty. He checked her room. She was there. Still. Too still. He moved fast. Her face was pale, lips dry, her skin cooler than usual, even for a Zalari. Her eyes fluttered, unfocused. "Kalith," he said urgently, kneeling beside her. She barely moved. He touched her forehead. Burning. He grabbed the med kit. The scanner beeped and flashed red. Dehydration, viral infection, organ strain. He cursed, under his breath. The nearest medical unit was over 30 miles away, across jagged cliffs and heat storms. "No time," he muttered. He wrapped her in thermal blankets, injected a stabilizer, and packed water rations. Then he lifted her gently in his arms. Her body was heavier than he expected. She was tall and armored even in sleep, but he didn't hesitate. He stepped out into the sun and started walking. The terrain was brutal. Sand sliced the air like knives. Jack's boots slipped on loose rock, but he didn't stop. Every few minutes he looked down at her. Her eyes were still shut. She whispered once, "Why?" He looked down. "You do it for me," he said. Even though he didn't know if that was true, he just hoped. By the 5th mile, the wind howled louder. A heat storm was coming. Jack covered her face with a shield cloth. His own hands blistered under the sun, but he tightened his grip. One step, then another, and another. His legs screamed, his throat dry, but he didn't stop. At mile 12, the sky turned orange. The air grew thick. He could barely see, but he kept going. He stumbled, fell to one knee, almost dropped her, but didn't. Instead, he pulled her closer and whispered, "Don't leave me now. You're not just a mission anymore." Finally, he reached the outskirts of the medic camp. The guards ran toward him, surprised. "A human? She's Zalari. Quick, scan her." They took her from his arms, rushed her inside. Jack collapsed just outside the tent, his vision spinning. Then, darkness. Hours later, Kalith opened her eyes. She was in a medical bed, soft lights above her. She blinked. The last thing she remembered was the dome, then pain, then arms carrying her. She turned her head slowly. Jack sat in a chair nearby, asleep, bruised, burned, bandaged, but breathing. She stared at him for a long time, then whispered, "Why did you do that?" His eyes opened slowly. He sat up, smiling weakly. "You're awake," he said. "You shouldn't have risked your life," she said. He shrugged. "You think I'd just leave you?" She looked away. "You're a fool." "Maybe," he said, "but I'm your fool now." She didn't speak for a while, then quietly, "I would not have done the same." "Not before?" He nodded. "But maybe now?" She hesitated, then gave a single nod. He leaned forward. "You scared me." "I scare everyone," she said. "You don't scare me," he replied. She looked at him, this strange human, so soft, so stubborn, so stupid, so real. The next day she was stronger. They returned to the dome after 2 days. She walked slower. He helped her once, and she didn't pull away. That night, she sat beside him in the main room. "I have to ask," she said. "Go ahead." "Why? Didn't you leave when you saw what kind of wife they forced on you?" Jack looked at her, serious. "I wasn't forced to stay." She blinked. He continued. "I chose to. Even knowing I didn't want you? That I saw you as a punishment? I knew you'd been hurt," he said. "And I figured maybe all you needed was someone who didn't run." She swallowed hard. "Most people either feared me or wanted to own me." "I just wanted to sit beside you," Jack said. "And if I never wanted more, then I'd still be here," he answered. She stared at him for a long time, then quietly asked, "Would you hold my hand?" He didn't answer with words, he just reached out, and she let him. The question she feared. Kalith stood by the window as the twin moons rose over the desert. She didn't wear her armor, just a soft black robe that hung from her shoulders like quiet shadow. The sand outside had stopped blowing. The night was still, peaceful. Inside it was not. Her chest felt tight, and she didn't know why. Behind her, Jack sat on the couch, quietly fixing a tool from the water pump. He didn't hum or whistle like most humans. He worked in silence, letting the tension between them fill the room. He felt it too. Something had shifted, and neither of them knew how to name it. Kalith turned finally. She took a slow breath. "I need to ask you something," she said. Jack looked up. "I've been trying to understand something about humans. About you." He waited. She walked closer, her hands behind her back. "This bond. This marriage. You never fought it. You never argued. Why?" Jack looked thoughtful, then answered softly. "Because I saw something in you worth waiting for." She blinked. "I treated you like a stranger, like a burden. I know. I rejected every effort. You did." She stepped even closer. "And yet, you still stayed." "I did." She narrowed her eyes. "Why?" Jack set the tool down and stood slowly. Their eyes met. And then, he said it. "Because I love you." The words hit like a storm. She stared at him, frozen. Her mouth opened, but no words came. No one had ever said that to her, not like this, not freely, not softly. Not without demand. He wasn't begging. He wasn't trying to win. He was simply telling the truth, and truth was the one thing she feared the most. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," he replied, "but I need you to know." She looked away, her hands trembling slightly. He stepped back. "I'll give you space," he said. "If you don't feel anything back, I'll leave tomorrow. I won't make this harder than it already is." She turned to him quickly. "No." His eyes widened. She stepped forward, faster now. She stood just inches away from him. Her voice shook. "I don't want you to leave." He searched her eyes. "Are you saying that because you feel something, or because you're afraid to be alone again?" She looked down. Her voice was quiet. "Maybe both." Jack didn't move, he just waited. "I was trained to be a weapon," she said. "A tool for war. Love was weakness, trust was dangerous." He nodded slowly. "And then you showed up," she continued, "with your quiet voice and soft hands, and stupid earth food." A small smile touched her lips. "And now I can't sleep without wondering what you'll do next." He smiled gently. "That sounds like a start." She reached up and touched his chest. "Say it again," she whispered. He placed his hand over hers. "I love you." Her eyes glistened. Then, she did something she never expected of herself. She leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fiery or bold. It was gentle, careful, new, like two people discovering they could finally breathe. When they pulled apart, she didn't step back. She rested her forehead against his. "I never wanted this," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but now I don't want to lose it." "Then don't." That night they sat together near the fire, not lovers, not strangers, something in between. A quiet bond finally starting to feel real. In the shadows beyond the dome, a small hovercam beeped. It had watched everything, and far away in the capital, Palace, Queen Draylana stared at the screen, her fingers clenched. "They were supposed to break each other," she said. Behind her, an advisor whispered. "But instead, they've begun to heal. Enemies return." The night was too quiet. Kalith felt it in her bones as she stood outside the dome, scanning the horizon. The wind had stopped. Even the insects had gone still. Jack was inside, repairing the comm device. Calith's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. In the capital, Queen Drylana watched the live feed from the hidden drone. Her face showed no emotion, but her voice was sharp. They've bonded. This is no longer punishment, it's alliance. Her advisor looked nervous. Shall we separate them, Your Majesty? Not separate, the Queen replied. Remove. Back at the outpost, Calith stepped back inside the dome. Jack looked up. Everything okay? No, she said quickly. Something's coming. Before he could reply, the power cut out. The lights died. And then, bang! The door exploded. Inward. Smoke. Flashes of red. Armed attackers in dark armor stormed in. 3, no 4, firing stun shots. Jack grabbed Calith and pulled her down behind the kitchen wall. They're Zilari elite, she hissed, recognizing their markings. My mother sent them. Jack's eyes darkened. She couldn't handle you choosing someone she hates. Or becoming someone she fears. They moved fast. Jack flipped the table for cover, tossing her a stun baton. She caught it and smiled. About time this marriage got exciting. One attacker rushed the wall. Jack rolled out, firing 2 stun blasts. 1 hit. The soldier dropped. Calith moved like lightning, sweeping another's legs, elbowing his helmet with force, but they kept coming. One grabbed Calith from behind. Jack tackled him full speed, crashing into a wall. Dust rained down. Calith turned. Are you okay? He wiped blood from his mouth. Just a scratch. You always say that. More soldiers climbed in through the roof vent. Too many. They were being surrounded. One soldier raised a sonic rifle and aimed at Calith's back. Jack saw it. He didn't think. He just ran and jumped in front of her. The blast hit him square in the chest. He fell. Hard. Calith screamed, "No!" Everything inside her snapped. She turned, eyes glowing with fury, and moved like fire. 2 soldiers dropped from her attacks. Another tried to run. She grabbed his collar, growling, "Tell your queen, her daughter doesn't need saving." Then, she knocked him out cold. Silence fell. Smoke drifted across the room. Bodies lay unconscious. Calith dropped her weapon and ran to Jack. He was breathing, but barely. She held him in her arms, her voice breaking. "You stupid, kind, brave fool." His eyes fluttered open. "You're welcome," he whispered weakly. She laughed through tears. "That was reckless." "Yeah," he coughed. "But worth it." She pressed her forehead against his. "You don't get to die now." "Not planning to." Later that night, after patching his wounds and sealing the dome, she sat beside him on the bed. The dome was quiet again. But they weren't. They held hands without words. The pain still fresh, the fear still near, but the bond between them, stronger than ever. In the capital, Queen Drylana received the report. Failure. Again. Her advisor said carefully, "Shall we send more?" The Queen stared at the screen. "No. If we try to break them again, we may lose her forever." The choice of her heart. The wounds healed. Slowly. Jack rested for 3 days in the dome while Calith guarded the door with her weapon across her lap. She barely slept. She barely spoke. But her mind was loud. Her thoughts burned like the desert sun. They had tried to kill him. For her. For love. And she had almost lost him. On the 4th morning, Jack finally sat up with less pain. He looked at her, pale and tired. "You haven't left the room," he said softly. "I didn't plan to," she replied. He smiled. "You're not bad at caring, you know." She gave him a look. "I'll take that as praise." He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. "Calith." "I don't want to stay here hiding," he said. "I don't either." "Then let's go," he said. "Face the court. Tell them the truth." She paused, then nodded slowly. "Yes. It's time." The message was sent through a secure channel. 3 days later, a transport arrived. 1 pilot. No guards. It took them across the stars, back to the capital she once called home. The palace walls were still tall and bright. The people still bowed and whispered, but Caliph didn't feel small anymore. She walked beside Jack, and he walked like a man ready to protect her again, if needed. Inside the throne hall, Queen Draylana waited. The council was gathered, the nobles silent. Everyone expected a formal apology, or quiet surrender. What they got instead was fire. Caliph stepped forward, armor gleaming, eyes sharp. "I was punished for showing mercy," she said loudly. "I was exiled for refusing to be cruel. And now, you tried to kill the man I was forced to marry because I learned to care for him." The queen raised a hand. "You forget who you speak to." "No," Caliph said. "For once I remember exactly who I am speaking to." Whispers spread through the room. "I didn't choose this bond," Caliph continued, "but it chose me, and I will not break it." The queen's voice dropped cold. "You stand with a human?" Caliph nodded. "I stand with a man who would die to protect someone he was told not to love." Jack stepped forward now beside her. He spoke calmly. "I didn't come for power. I came for peace. And now I stand beside Caliph, not as her guard or her husband by law, but by her choice." The room was stunned. Even the queen sat still. Caliph looked around. "If the council wishes to end this bond, they may, but I will not. I'll walk away from this throne, but not from him." Jack gently reached for her hand, and this time, she took his first. Silence. Then, a slow clap. An elder noble stood. "I once called this girl unworthy," he said. "But today, I see someone stronger than the crown itself." Another stood beside him, then another, and another. The queen watched as one by one the nobles rose. Not for her, but for Caliph. Later, in the quiet of the royal garden, Jack and Caliph sat under the stars. Same spot where she once told him she hated him. Now, she leaned on his shoulder. "You know," she whispered. "This was never supposed to happen." "I know," he replied, "but I'm glad it did." She smiled. "I used to think punishment was a cage, but now—" She looked at him. "I think it was a door." He turned and softly asked, "Caliph, this time without force, will you be mine?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, "now and always."